The idea of InMobi was not necessarily the idea that came up, that we came up to begin with. The idea of InMobi was more to do with, something that we always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. We realized that, mobile will be a huge, massive platform in the world, and we thought we should do something on it. And as we explored multiple different things, we actually initially started off, with tinkering with the idea of how can we better utilize and provide value to users and to the telecom operators on the billions of text messages that are floating around. We weren't successful in it. So, the idea of InMobi, I would say, is something that we stumbled upon or evolved into with a period of time. But I think one thing was very clear to us, that the mobile platforms will be large. We were never clear that it will be so large as what's today. But we thought it will be large, and we thought that it will be really large, especially in developing markets. Therefore, I moved back from San Francisco to India to start the company, because I thought, look, in developing markets, it could be something pretty useful. But one thing I would say at the end of all of this, I don't think as an entrepreneur, I don't think it's about the idea. It's about the perseverance and grit to stay with the fact that something will happen. It's like walking into a fog, and over a period of time something clicks, and when something clicks, you just got to double click and triple click and just go banging on that one, and that's pretty much what we did. The challenges that we had in the beginning were very different from the challenges that we have today. When we started off back in 2007, 2008, it was a time period when startups weren't a cool thing. Hiring people was extremely hard. It was very clear to it was not clear to people why would they join. Like, the people had issues like, if you join a startup, you won't get married, right? So you had to deal with what I would call a societal level challenge. I think that that was the biggest hurdle that we had to go through, which is to essentially convince people that joining a startup is going to add a lot of value to them, and they'll fare better in life if they actually work for startups. So that was one. The second one was, look, what were we doing as InMobi? We were trying to build a global product. Building a global product out of India was not necessarily something that the world accepted. And so trying to convince people in Europe and customers in US and different parts of the world to say, hey, we have a great product that we want to show you, was not easy, because people didn't accept a product being built out of Bangalore to be world class. And so therefore they would ask us, hey, aren't you based out of Silicon Valley? Aren't you a Valley company? And we would say, no, we are a Bangalore company. And therefore we had a big hurdle to kind of go over that. Thankfully we don't have to face that anymore, and so that's good. I think the third challenge was in India, and again it'll kind of go back to more cultural a point. The hurdle of people believing that we can build something big was not very deep. People always believed that the big things can be built by the Tatas and the Birlas and people with legacy, and therefore the belief that we should think of something massive and something big and grow something really large culturally wasn't part of the DNA of the people. And so therefore, to convince people to really think big and beyond their own boundaries, because we all grew up in what I would call a middle class society, where we were told to stay within our own limits. And I think what startups require you to do is to go way beyond your own limits, dream beyond, be crazy, and that's not something that culturally is fit into the DNA of the people. So I would say these were our three massive big challenges, which hopefully I think we're over them now. Look, we are a mobile advertising platform, probably one of the largest advertising platforms in the world today. I would say the value that we think we provide to people, to our customers and to developers, and actually more importantly now to the users, is very simple. For users, we felt, we always have believed that advertising is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But somehow over the past 15, 20 years, advertising has lost its sheen. It's seen as something which is not necessarily very, useful. People try to avoid advertising. You watch television, you try to, kind of skip through the ads. Now, why has that happened? Because during a period of last 15 years or so, people essentially, advertising was brutalized, and it essentially became a medium for who can be louder as against who can be more trustworthy. So somewhere advertising lost its trust, and therefore users stopped seeing value in advertising. And today's consumers are really smart. So one of our biggest value propositions today, which nobody else is actually able to even come close to, is to say, how do I provide value to the user at the right point, at the right time? And that has become the mantra for the company. And so therefore, what we care about most, even before our customers, our developers, is how do I make users love advertising? And that's our biggest value proposition that we're working towards. And very recently, we announced our own platform called Meep, which essentially works towards that philosophy. Now, when it comes to the developers, we realize that developers are also, while they obviously love to make money through advertising, they always had looked at advertising within their own applications as a necessary evil. And we realized that, look, if that's the case, then we will never be an integral part of the application. So with Meep as a platform where we believe that we are actually improving the lives of consumers, where consumers are loving our advertising, developers are now taking up our advertising because their app gets enhanced in value. And that's a big change from where we were, a couple of years ago. And I think that's a big value proposition. In addition to making amazing amount of revenue for the developers, we actually make consumers love the developers app even more because Meep's inside or InMobi is inside their applications. Comes the third entity in this whole ecosystem, which is advertisers. Advertisers have always wanted that their brands be presented and their products be presented in front of consumers such that their money is not wasted, more importantly. And secondly, that consumers love their products in an environment that really is feasible. Now, everyone, if you ask any brand ambassador or brand advertiser, they will always say that they're looking for ways to reposition their brand and connect with consumers in a very different way. I think Meep allows for them to do that in a way that their brand's value is really enhanced. So we think, we have taken a very different approach to advertising. We have taken upon ourselves to make the world love advertising and for consumers to really see amazing amount of value from advertising. And I think it's what we pride ourselves in. We pride ourselves in innovation, and we are innovating on the edges of advertising because we think the traditional advertising world has lived its life and it needs to be reinvented. If you fast forward few years, the number of smartphones in the country would reach about 400 to 500 million. It will become the biggest platform, media platform, compared to any other possible media platform in the world. It'll be so large as a media platform that any brand, any product needs to be in the mobile platform, on the mobile platform, if they want to connect with their consumers. From a consumer side, by the way, I think today somewhere around 30 to 40% of their media time is actually spent on mobile. In fact, in India, that time is actually touching 50%. If consumers are spending roughly 50% of their time on mobile, if you're a brand who wants to kind of take their products out, you have to be on the mobile platform. So therefore, in some shape and form, I would argue, mobile becomes the de facto platform along with television, which will be really large. Now, from a perspective of InMobi, I think we are, we live in India. We clearly understand India very well. We are a very large player even globally. But certainly for India, I think what we are going to do is we're going to innovate for India. We think we will bring mobile advertising to India in a way that nobody else has ever brought. And we think that value would be massive. And hopefully over the next few years, you will see how we will disrupt the mobile advertising market for India and give real value to Indian brands, Indian advertisers, Indian developers, and more importantly, Indian consumers. Look, over the past 6-7 years, I think the entrepreneurial ecosystem in India has evolved like I've never seen before. Today's entrepreneurs are extremely smart, very, very smart, far younger, by the way, I think. I think the teams that these entrepreneurs are actually putting together are very strong because some very, very good talent is willing to come and join startups. So that's really evolved, which is very important. Thirdly, there is no dearth of money. Unlike when we started, you had to really kind of roam around searching for money, and there were only handful of people who would even come together to say we can fund startups, right? Lastly, I think the consumers spending on the digital platform even exist today. So therefore, internet-based businesses can actually get started, which is a big change. And I think that in itself, changes the scope of the problems that one can pick up. Look, for example, in InMobi, we had to pick up a problem and had to go global because, it was very hard to solve for that problem in India. If InMobi were to be formed today, we can actually build a business just in India. Just that 7 years ago, we couldn't build one just in India because the Indian market wasn't that large. And so I think that's a massive change. And I think, if there were problems of India that has to be solved, whether it's education, healthcare, security, anything of that nature, I think they will be solved not through incumbents, but through, startups, through entrepreneurs and through technology. And so therefore, I think over the next 10 years, India will evolve because of startups.